United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we would normally begin with the public comment section, and tonight we don't have any comments that are agenda related at the beginning of the meeting. So I believe we have several comments that are non-agenda related, and we'll have those at the close of our business portion of the meeting. So first, I think we start off with some fun stuff with our student representative to the board, Amina.
In terms of clubs, Model UN has had some big wins. They got Best Medium Delegation in the Lebanese Valley Model UN. Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
in terms of... Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I get it, yeah.
It's fine.
You're fine, Amina.
It's okay.
Keep talking.
You're
Just keep talking.
Just fine.
Just keep talking.
Yeah, I can hear you great.
You're doing great. Thank you.
In terms of student council, we've rescheduled Halloween, or the Pokoween, for the 23rd. We've also started a new Spirit Week as well. WLTL has won 4 awards for the Dury Awards. Theater has started the Neighborhood 3 Requisition of Doom, and they're set for this Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. We've also have the Wizard of Oz rehearsals for the freshman and sophomore show. Astro Club has had some issues with weather, but is planning on holding a double meeting this week. In terms of sports, we're almost at the end of fall sports, so we have a few state competitions. Cross country boys have gotten second place varsity finish at the silver division, while girls have gotten 4th place in silver division as well. Girls golf has gotten 8th in conference. Boys golf is 6th in state. Varsity volleyball is 4th in state and will have their Blue Nami game on October 20th. And the boys bowling is starting up as well. We have informational meetings on the 25th. In the beginning, our original HOCO pep rally was really fun. We had a large student turnout, and our own Dr. Tyrell was leading our games. Our Mr. LT was Mr. Bo Brown, while our homecoming queen was Alexis Carmody. We also had a book club in celebration of Latinx, which had interesting conversations on race and our book Poet X. We have a blood drive coming up on Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. At the North Campus Vaughn Gym. And of course, congratulations to our October Students of the Month. They were nominated by our teachers and selected by various departments since they were the most exemplary in each subject. And that's it.
Great job.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on.
Tons.
You guys are busy. I'm excited about all the play action too, the theater.
A lot of good stuff coming up in our Reber Center and our PAC, that's for sure.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much. All right, well, I guess with that, turn it
All
over
right.
to you, Dr. Waterman.
Thank you, President Dillon. So this month, LTHS celebrates LGBTQ plus History Month, an annual observance of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender history and the history of gay rights and the related civil rights movement. LGBTQ History Month provides role models, builds community, and represents a civil rights statement about the contributions of the LGBTQ community to our success as a country. During the first week of October, students learned about the famous and historic figures who changed the world. In week 2, students were invited to join the Prism Club for a lunch trivia event. There's also a planned documentary watch party for the American Experience film Stonewall Uprising. So during this whole month of October, LT is excited to celebrate LGBTQ plus History Month. October is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to raise awareness about the impact of breast cancer on our society. At LT, future health professionals sponsored a pink out in which they sold t-shirts, cotton candy, and collected donations after releasing pink powder at Friday evening's football game, all in an effort to support the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Cancer obviously affects all of us, and LT is proud to recognize and support the efforts being made to recognize Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I also want to recognize the LT PTC and the Parent Community Network for their work over the last couple months in partnering with the Glenbard Parent Series to offer a variety of online events for our parents and community. I encourage all of our parents to check out the LT website for a list of some really great upcoming events hosted by the Glenbard Parent Series. Also, so from a FOIA report perspective, since our last meeting, we received the following FOIA requests. We responded to a request from a student for additional information related to LT stipend committee process. We responded to a request from the LT Paraeducator Association for additional information related to wages, resignations, insurance, substitute pay, and seniority lists. We also responded to a request from local labs for additional information related to LT student and staff COVID-19 data, the 1619 project requesting whether or not LT either teaches or possesses various titles and authors about slavery and Black history in America, and information about LT's American Rescue Plan, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds and plans as well. We also responded to a request from a parent for specific information related to an incident that occurred, and we responded to a request from NBC for information related to unclaimed funds and property. So that's our FOIA report. At that point, I'm going to take a pause right now, and I'd like to introduce Kate Kelly, the chair of our LTCAC committee. We had a meeting back on September 15th to discuss student supports and the beginning of the school year, and Ms. Kelly is going to present a summary of that meeting.
I am back again. 4 years running. I know you're so excited to see me, aren't you? We had our first meeting, and I have to tell you that we are so pleased that Dr. Waterman and the board have convened us yet again to give you feedback. This time our topic was a little different, so the feedback is somewhat to you, but to Leslie Owens and her great team. They presented a wonderful program to us regarding, we talked about remote learning, but we also talked about what we can do to help our students. So there's 3 questions that were presented to us, and I present to you the consensus. The first question, what do you believe are the most significant issues affecting the adolescents in our community that should be addressed by prevention and wellness efforts? I give you A to Z. I will run through them. Wellness Center for Physical Wellness, where students can exercise and have access to outside of PE and sports, especially those students not in athletics. Substance abuse, social media education, tolerance, negative slurs in the bathrooms, potential study groups to get specific course support, connecting with others and coming out of isolation, using instructional time to focus on SEL issues. Friendship bracelets and PE this week were very well received. Fidelity of instruction of SEL for teachers. Continue supporting claims that focus on SEL, like our new yoga and wellness clubs. Academic stressors, student anxiety and stress. Sense of belonging, freshman transition, and junior transition. Social skills development, more time for social interaction. Diversity challenges, trauma-informed practices, professional learning, self-regulation and depression, transition to post-secondary pursuits, suicide, restorative circles and practices, transition back to school after hospitalization. Sophomores need extra support because there was no freshman year. How kids respond to differences, gender, sexual identity, gender equality, consequences for bullying behavior, and Z, each student should feel they have a trusted adult in this building. Question 2, if we use backwards planning to determine the elements of strong school counseling and prevention wellness programming, what should our goals be for every student at the end of their high school experience? What should every student know and be able to do with regard to social and emotional learning and post-secondary planning and preparation? Again, we did A to Z, because we want to cover everything in our group. We have to think about what the students will be doing when they leave LT from the moment they start LT. Same counselor for all 4 years is great. Finding a community of belonging involvement that is accepting and tolerant. Feel proud of their experience and thankful for the opportunities they had at school. Strong physical, nutritional awareness and knowing how to attend to mental needs. Work on self-confidence, confidence to engage in new situations and with new people. How to balance your responsibilities and regulate your emotions. How to control your own success. How to advocate for themselves. Normalizing life stress, knowledge or skills to cope, awareness and empathy for others. Life skills. Responsible decision-making, job interviewing, and making your own deadlines. Executive functioning skills. Mental wellness versus illness model. Ready for independence. Knowing and using SEL strategies, sense of belonging and being a part of a community. How to be kind and understand your actions and reactions. Focus on identifying and regulating feelings. Strong interpersonal skills, empathy, advocacy, conversational skills, responding to peer pressure. Verbalize goals for the next 1 to 5 years after LT. Being able to work successfully within a group, navigating change. Being proficient about using technology as a learner. Sense of self and to be able to identify their strengths. Sense of community, how to listen, engage, and relate. Students need to learn to manage their email and engage in independent communication. Help students figure out their personal triggers. Help students determine what kind of learners they are and what their interests are. Self-awareness and accountability. Our last question. Over the past 6 months, LT has attempted to increase our focus on student wellness and social and emotional learning. LT held its first student wellness conference for all students on May 5th, 21, and began the 21-22 school year with 1 day of shortened periods and the LT Fest and 1 day of SEL lessons for all students. We were asked for our feedback from parents, community members, staff, and faculty. 2021-22 SEL in person was more successful, positively attended, recommend repeating mid-year. Good to focus on SEL early. Some advocated for more SEL activities. Touring experience led by a student chaperone was not very meaningful. Students reported they enjoyed it. Some teachers were more into it than others. Good concept. Some students weren't sure what it was all about or how to manage it. Student Wellness Conference. Some students, seniors, thought it was corny. That came from a student, that word. Could counselors provide resources, activities for parents regarding SEL to be used at home? Some students went into the day not excited, but then loved it. Really good to focus on the students making connections. Be mindful of the learning environment, specifically PE. LT Fest was a good idea. The weather ruined it. I think that was from a student as well. More after-school opportunities for SEL mindfulness. There were multiple responses that LT was great, that SEL was great that day, and they enjoyed the school and the day. Start school year with community building in the classroom makes students feel better about participating, and self-confidence needs to be worked on more. So those are three consensus questions, our responses. We had excellent turnout, and for those of you who don't know, the Lte Advisory Council is made up of faculty, staff, students, parents, and community members who come together. We are presented, again, Leslie, you did a great job, we really appreciated it, and we give you our feedback. If there's any topics you want covered, please let Dr. Waterman know, and he will inform me that that's what we're doing next. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Thank
Kate.
you.
Appreciate it.
And huge appreciation to the entire LTCAC. We had about 55 people there, I think, at the last meeting. So our next meeting is coming up on November 17th, and we're looking forward to hearing some efforts on equity and belonging here at LT. So that's the next meeting. Thank you again.
Excuse me, could we get a copy of that synopsis, or could?
I can share.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, it
there
is. I'm
was, yeah,
sorry.
there were some
I'm
notes
sorry.
in there.
But it was more dramatic to have me.
No, I like it, I like that.
I did think maybe there was more to it, but I mean, there was tons to it, and then maybe we get all the other discussion that went on, so thank you for doing that, that was awesome.
Okay. I have one more really positive and hopefully exciting item. It is my honor tonight to present our first Vita Plena Award recipient of the new school year. The Vita Plena Award has been presented historically by the superintendent to a deserving individual going back to several decades, few decades. I think it's the early 90s. So during the early part of the school year, me being new in this role, during the early part of the school year, I reached out to our current 32 staff members who have received a Vita Plena Award, because I wanted to get their thoughts on kind of what the award meant to them and also to get some information on just the characteristics that they felt were really instrumental in them being selected for the award. The themes that I discovered through this process were the idea of innovation, inspiration, someone who is creative, and then overall that the award recipients were people who really who are selfless and who go above and beyond. So as we looked to honor a staff member for the Vita Plena Award for quarter one, Katie Myers, who teaches physical welfare, was a natural choice. Katie began her career at Lte here in 2006 and has taught general junior and senior PE, strength training at the junior senior level, exercise physiology, sports officiating, and also basic self-defense courses within the physical welfare division. She's also coached boys volleyball, girls basketball, girls track, girls volleyball, has served as a general event supervisor, has coordinated winter intramurals, has been instrumental in professional learning from a lot of different levels here at Lte, has really just become involved and really made a tremendous impact on our school community. To also demonstrate her passion for lifelong learning, Katie also participated in and graduated from the Learning Forward Academy in 2018, where she worked with a cohort of other educators from around the world to further her knowledge and her skills in the classroom, which is a pretty awesome experience. Most recently, she worked with a group of other teachers in physical welfare and began teaching a new course, Self-Defense for Girls, last school year. This class has had a tremendous impact on the students, not only the students within the course, but also some of the curricular content has been adapted in our health class to benefit all students. Simply put, we are extremely proud to have Katie working with our students and families and are honored to present her tonight with the Vita Plena Award. Congratulations, Katie.
Sure. I didn't know I had to say anything, but I will. Just a quick correction. Joanne Peretz and Shaz are two of my mentors who showed up surprisingly, and I'm really grateful for that. But they stole me from track and field, and I went into boys volleyball pretty quickly. So I was not actually a girls track coach, but I did participate as an athlete when I was young. So I just want to clarify that. I'm very, very lucky to work at Lte. I was thinking, when Dr. Waterman told me I got this award, are you sure? Katie Myers. I'm very humbled by it. I show up every day because I truly believe in what we do in PE. We listen to the LTCAC talk about the total student, and in PE we have the opportunity to actually accomplish all of those things for the total student. So I'm very lucky that I can show up every day and I have a community that supports a really innovative take on how we offer a really good PE curriculum. And I couldn't do it without everyone in here. The administrators I'm looking at, my sister showed up and surprised me, and all these teachers, and a special acknowledgement of the two self-defense teachers over there, because that's been transformational. So thank you. Congrats, Katie.
That concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Waterman. And I need to back it up on the note of amazing faculty and staff. We have Andrew Johannes here with us for a report for the LTEA, and I apologize that I didn't have you on in the right spot. So please join us now.
Good evening. I am Andrew Johannes. I am the president of the LTA Association. We first would like to commend Dr. Waterman and Dr. Tyrell for their handling of the situation of homecoming. It was an unfortunate event, but we applaud their efforts in making sure all students were safe and that we have rescheduled homecoming for this Saturday. The union supports the new calendar that is being proposed. We thank Scott Eggerding for his efforts to try to make it balanced in each semester, but Election Day kind of made it a little tricky. The only request that we have is that South Campus open house be moved to the 8th of September and North Campus, which I think was, but in the packet it's still in those old dates. The LTA supports the development of the strategic plan. We believe that this will be a great way to provide clarity and direction for the school. This has been a very stressful year for both teachers and students. I would like to celebrate the job the teachers have done thus far this year. I'm confident that Dr. Tyrell and I can work together to help develop strategies to help alleviate some of this stress on the students and staff. The staffing shortage is continuing to have a negative effect. In particular, the special ed division is feeling this more than most divisions because of the lack of pairs impacts them the greatest. Every day, the special ed group must address the shortage, which is creating huge work inequities that we hope can be addressed and alleviate the stress felt in that division by all. We hope that some special ed teachers have reported feelings of isolated and not belonging, so we hope that we can address that and kind of bring them back into the fold. Technology continues to be a major disappointment this year. The lack of consistent available technology has negatively impacted instruction and the students. The tech coaches are performing tasks that historically have been done by help desks and can't assist teachers in their normal functions. From a teaching perspective, everything has gotten worse and more cumbersome. Everyone is forced to use ClassLink, and we don't see the benefit. We are hopeful that the upgrade in broadband will alleviate many of these issues that we're experiencing. So we're hopeful with that switch over tonight. And then finally, we'd like to celebrate a few teachers as well. So congratulations to Katie Myers from the LTA. That's awesome. Can't think of a better teacher that would deserve that award. And I'd also like to recognize 3 business teachers, Krista Wilcox, Natalie Carlson, and Ryan Garanstein. They were recognized for their superior teaching with Uncharted Learning, which is an online learning platform that we use. So congratulations to all those. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for continuing to get through what I know has been a pretty challenging year, but we're all excited to be here and back in person, so appreciate that. Next up, under unfinished business, action item number 1 is the district policy update, second reading. Mr. Piotrowski.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. On page 7, we do have the second reading for board policy updates. This is something that we have discussed began in September with the first reading at the committee of the whole, and then at the regular meeting in September, and then again at the committee of the whole meeting last week. There have been no changes to any of these policies throughout the process, but as a reminder, we do have the policies broken up into 3 main sections. The first section has 9 policies that have been recommended by the Illinois Association of School Boards to undergo a standard 5-year review. There are no changes to these policies, either from a legal or administrative reference or standpoint. We are just recommending that they be reviewed and then put forward for another 5-year review cycle, again in 5 years. Section 2, we do have 4 policies that have changes that are administrative in nature. These changes could include updates to legal references, school code citations, revised terminology, etc. None of those changes affect how the policies are interpreted, nor do they have any substantive changes to how we operate through those policies. And then finally, Section 3. These are policies that have not only been reviewed by the Illinois Association of School Boards through their through the press policy, but then also through our district administrative team as well as our district legal counsel. There are recommendations of changes to language or updates to language. All of those recommended changes are identified in the memorandum, and as I stated, none of them have changed from the initial discussion back at the September Committee of the Whole meeting through last week's Committee of the Whole meeting. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about any of the policies.
We had a lot of discussion about these policies because this is a second read, so we've seen this 3 times at least, I think, and some back and forth. So I think we got some clarity on a lot of the questions that were asked, so I appreciate that, Ed.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any questions or any comments? Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Great. Well then, if there's no questions, is there a motion to adopt the district policy updates as presented tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Marilyn, would you please call the roll?
Member Grudge,
Yes.
Member Kelly.
Yes.
Member Swinehart.
Yes.
Member Thomas.
Yes.
Member Vita Daniels.
Yes.
Member Dillon.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our second action item, we have the 2022-2023 school calendar. Got
Yes,
everything.
yes, thank you. As you heard a little bit from Andrew, we did have to make a change to our first reading of the calendar. So this is a new calendar. The state did add a new holiday for the election day, November the 8th of 2022 for all schools. So unfortunately, by putting in that day, it kind of played with all of our other dates. So we did take a look at how we would start the year. We also looked a lot at how that would affect the end of the year, and that's really the major impact. As the board will recall, we started on a Wednesday this past year, and we were hoping to do that again. Again, you heard also from the LTCAC the positive start with those SEL days and some of the Fun Fest stuff. We think we can still do that anyway, starting on a Monday, so we'll do our best to build that in. That also gives us some time to finish some summer projects by moving a little bit later. That does bump everything, including the last day of school, as well as graduation after Memorial Day, although as we talked about at the committee, that's very common. We haven't really finished before Memorial Day more than a handful of times. So again, it is very similar to what we've been doing ever since we finished the first semester before winter break with an imbalance of 10 days. We almost had it evened out without that day off and starting things a little earlier, but this is a familiar calendar. We haven't changed any of the major spring break, holiday, winter break, or anything like that. So this is a first read. It's been posted on the website. It's been in Dr. Terrell's communications to the community, and all communications are to be sent through me. I've received none at this time, so we'll let you know more next month. We'll take a look at the open house and some other things too, and make sure we got everything buttoned up, ready to go for approval in November. So I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
We're doing a first reading for the second time
First reading for the second.
next
Right.
month. And that was,
We didn't get to the second reading, yeah, exactly.
and that was shared today, actually, in Jen's communication. The draft of the calendar, as
Yes.
well as information to.
And it's been on the website for a week.
Do you foresee any issues with moving that open house for the teachers or?
You know, we've been discussing that quite a bit. How late after the start of school should you have an open house? And so if we do move it, that would be about a month after the start of school for the North Campus open house, which gets you almost to the mid-quarter. So we've been talking back and forth about 1st, 8th, or 15th all along. So the 1st and the 8th was what we were looking to keep it as, but we can certainly have additional discussion and make a final recommendation.
Can I ask, Andrew, is that just is it better for the teachers to have that one more week? Is that?
Historically, it's always been on the 3rd week of school. The first open house, South Campus, and then the 4th week has always been the North Campus. That's just historically, it's been, the 2 weeks allows for a little more time to get to know students.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because we're starting a little later now with the 22nd than for the school year start. So, yeah, I could see that. And then also, what we've been doing, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been getting out around Memorial Day, and now we'll be coming back after Memorial Day.
Correct. For years, we would come back after Memorial Day anyway, and we would graduate on the weekend after Memorial Day. In fact, I recall a conversation at the board table wondering if we should even go that early out because people have made plans for Memorial Day rather than graduation. But we moved graduation then to a Wednesday, so that alleviates some of that. And it doesn't impact the pep parade, Miss Kelly.
Mess with the pep parade. Great. Okay.
That's great.
Thanks, Scott. So we'll see that next month for our second reading.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next up, I guess, we'll move on to the 2022-2023 curriculum change proposals. Back to you.
Thank you. Again, just a quick review. This is the second time you've seen this. We've made some small changes to one of the items. Other than that, the proposals are still the same. As you saw last month, and at the committee meeting, you first saw the administrative recommendations, which is included in your packet as well. The changes, the new courses are a interesting variety of courses. We have dance studies, yoga, geometry construction, data, probability, sustainable urban agriculture, reading EL, dropping etymology, and adding an introduction to healthcare careers. So really, we've been looking at areas that we have not had as much coverage, such as healthcare careers, additional supports to offer students with the reading EL, looking at additional ways to meet math requirements and high interest science, as well as in our PE area, and they all left unfortunately, but really working on offering other options for students to not only get in good exercise, but also create lifelong healthy habits. So that's really the gist of those proposals here. We did add a little bit in the reading EL to clarify some components of that program. And then just so you all know where we're headed next, now that if these are approved, we're now giving those teachers and division chairs the green light to start really developing the courses. So we don't have curriculum maps yet. We haven't chosen textbooks. There's really a lot of time to piece all that together between now and the fall. It also gives us the opportunity, by approving these in October, to get it in the academic program guide so kids can sign up for the courses. So, this is a really important step, and as you saw outlined, it's been ongoing since actually they started generating ideas and finalizing them in February, meeting with me in March, having the first reading with the CSD team in April, and then now here to the board. So a lot of eyes have been on this, and the more we can clarify and add those little details, the better the outcome. So we do recommend through the central leadership team to approve all courses as presented.
And I know we spent some time back and forth on the measurements, test measurements for the EL program. So we updated and reflected that, and that program changed.
So that's different this week than it was last Tuesday. Those metrics were added.
Right. So
Does
that
that class need to be, because I'm noticing the signatures are not, it was changed in there, but it wasn't re-signed and redated
Okay.
by the, does that need to be
Have
re-signed
to
and it
go,
was changed?
so it'll essentially go back to so this is just the approval of the proposal, so they'll have to go, the team will have to then develop the course out, so we can get those signatures though.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be re-signed by them?
Right.
awesome.
I'll just say, I've always been impressed with LT and how diverse and how many opportunities that we offer our kids, but these are just more. And I just am always happy with all the new selections and moving with some of the changes, the yoga, the dance studies, trying to do new different math classes and science classes, and obviously the nursing. So I really appreciate your efforts of trying to always continue to branch out and see new ways that kids can learn. So thank you.
I will definitely pass it on to the chairs because we empower them to do quite a bit and to really look at their programming, and a lot of that comes from the teachers via the chair. So I'll definitely pass that along.
And I know we're going to be talking a little bit further too about EL as part of those opportunities that we can provide to our students, and that's going to be a big part of our discussion for next month. Yeah.
November 8th.
That'll be great. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you, guys. Anybody else? All righty. Then is there a motion to adopt the 2022-23 curriculum change proposals as presented tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Allison. And Marilyn, could you please call the roll?
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Swinehart?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Beta Daniels?
Yes.
Member Bretsch?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes. Okay, next up, under new business, action item number 1 is the 2021 tax levy. First reading, Mr. Stage.
No.
Oh, it's
You
not?
got the old agenda. You don't have the new agenda.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
It's strategic planning.
Ah,
I can do that if you want me to,
No,
but
no,
I
no,
don't even want to
I've
do
got
it.
I have my Brian's confused again. I apologize. Dr. Waterman, please enlighten us on the strategic
Yes.
planning contract, Consortium for Educational Change, please. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah, so last week I shared an overview of the strategic planning process and the work we've done since July to identify some organizations that help schools facilitate this process. After reviewing proposals from 5 different firms, I'm recommending that we engage with Consortium for Educational Change. Their process, I'm just going to share a brief overview this week and address a few of the questions that came up last week. But their process involves working with a group of approximately 60 different stakeholders to first take a look at data, complete that environmental scan. The team then analyzes that data to identify our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. Then works to determine where we want to be and ultimately how that's different than where we are now. The team develops a plan adopted by the Board of Education that will ultimately identify our core values, our priorities and objectives, and also lay the groundwork for determining really how we're going to get there, what strategies we're going to implement to meet those objectives. So I presented a lot of details last week, but for today, just wanted to share some of the more important components and also answer a few of the questions that came up. I think there was a question last week about the case study, District 155 case study in the packet. I had a chance to speak with their superintendent today and get more information about the process they went through. It was all positive, spoke very highly of the work of Consortium for Educational Change. Did confirm that they did that 3 years ago. So it's 2018 when they went through the process. They did a 5-year plan, so it's 2019 to 2024. I think the question also came up last week. Hinsdale completed theirs 3 years ago as well in 2018. And then another question that was raised last week was about if CEC had signed on any other schools this school year. And I confirmed that so far they've got 2 high schools. One is not local. Carbondale is starting their strategic planning journey this year. And then SACID, which is a special ed cooperative that includes high schools in Naperville, are starting their strategic planning journey as well this year. So those are some questions that came up last week that I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about. But at this point, I would recommend Consortium for Educational Change to engage with them to kick off our strategic planning process.
We're really, excited about it. And some of what we discussed too was about the dashboard component and the community involvement that they'll be a part of, so that we can kind of really get into what our community and the environment is constituents are telling us.
Yeah, this plan has to be representative of all stakeholders.
Right.
100%. That's the value in it.
Yeah. And again, remind me, Brian, how many firms did you vet before?
5.
There
Yeah.
were
So
5.
we looked at proposals from 5 different companies.
And were they all local? Or were
No,
they all over?
no, they were all over. One was in Boston. I think the other 4 were here though.
And
Yeah,
Consortium is here.
Is
They're
here.
local.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
local. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good.
We appreciate the follow-up on the questions from last week and the thorough presentation that you gave there. Sounds like you've checked references and vetted several firms and kept cost in mind, from what I recall from last week.
Yeah,
So
yep.
Yeah, that's
it's a really
very helpful.
exciting start to
It
will
is.
be a great adventure or journey, as you said.
Yes, we're very eager to get started.
Me too. Anybody else?
Could you remind, what will immediate next steps then be, just briefly after tonight, moving forward?
So I'm gonna meet with our consultant Friday and figure that out. Like
Oh,
basically
okay.
say if this goes well tonight, then we'll have it board approved and I can officially then engage with our consultant and start thinking about timelines and what information we need and basically put a calendar in place.
Right.
Yep.
Because we did have a pretty ambitious
We did.
timeline, I believe.
Yes.
We were looking for something by
Yeah.
May, I think is what we were
Yeah,
looking for.
that
So,
would
yeah.
be the goal, would be adopt it at this table in May.
Great.
And that way, if we don't get there, we got June, so, but May would be ideal.
All right. With that, if nobody has any other questions, is there a motion to approve the strategic planning contract for Consortium for Educational Change?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Julie and Jill. And then Marilyn, would you please call the roll?
Member Swinehart?
Yes.
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Vita Daniels?
Yes.
Member Grutch?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes. Okay. Annual assessment. Yep, all right, great. Moving right along.
So the next agenda item is the annual assessment report. I'll have Katie come up and join us. Last week, Katie presented a detailed overview of the standardized assessment report from last year. I just want to make a note at the beginning here that this includes standardized assessment information, ACT, SAT, PSAT from last year, and advanced placement courses. We also administer a variety of other assessments throughout the year to smaller groups of students. Those results show up in different reports throughout the year. It's not the scope of this particular assessment report. This assessment report is really focused on the standardized assessments and advanced placement. So with that, Katie, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Since I already had an opportunity to review standardized assessment data earlier this month, I'm going to keep this evening's review relatively brief. One of the things to note about Illinois is that it recently changed the Illinois Science Assessment from a biology test to a 3-section assessment for all juniors, regardless of whether the juniors are enrolled in a science class during their junior year or not. The class of 2022 is the first class that will receive scores on the new Illinois Science Assessment, which is aligned to the NGSS standards and evaluates life science, physical science, and earth science with engineering technology embedded. These scores should be released this month, but cannot be compared to past scores because the test content has changed drastically. The class of 2022 will provide baseline scores for the new science tests when released. Each year I report on the SAT suite of assessments. Unfortunately, I will not be reporting on the suite of assessments in its entirety because the PSAT 9 and 10 were canceled in March of 2020 and March of 2021. Our current seniors, the class of 2022, however, was able to sit for the school day SAT or the state SAT in April of 2021. The average score for the class of 2022 was a 1093. This mean score decreased by 38 points when compared to the class of 2020, but is higher than the mean score for the state and total group. 53% of the class of 2022 met both college readiness benchmarks in evidence-based reading and writing and math. This is a decrease of 13 percentage points when compared to the class of 2020. While the state percentage also declined, Lt's decline was slightly steeper. The total group's percentage meeting both benchmarks increased, which is likely due to a large decrease in the number of testers, 108,000 less testers, and that's because many schools did not give the test or school was remote last year. The class of 2022 struggled to meet college readiness benchmarks in math more than they did in evidence-based reading and writing. This was true for LT, the state, and the total group. However, LT had a steeper increase in the percentage of students in the lowest benchmark for math than the state or total group. This is likely due to last year's schedule being 525 less instructional minutes than previous years. Also likely due to remote learning for the last portion of their sophomore year, which was geometry being remote because a quarter or 40% of the SAT is geometry in the math section. It may be due to hybrid learning, could be due to lack of exposure to the SAT because they didn't have the PSAT in the previous year. Additionally, there's a non-calculator portion, and while learning online, they were able to use their calculator. Because educational and environmental conditions were so drastically different for the class of 2022, it is unwise to compare their performance to previous classes. But what we can do is compare the students of the class of 2022 to themselves. And when we do this, the data shows an achievement gap, with performance being lower for ELs. And when we compare the EL performance, or the mean, to the non-ELs, there's a 290-point difference. When we compare the mean score of Black students to the mean score of all students, there is a 229-point difference. When we compare the mean score of students with IEPs to that of students with non-IEPs, there's a 234-point difference. When we compare the mean score of Hispanic students to those that are non-Hispanic, we have a difference of 121 points less. And in terms of free and reduced lunch compared to non-free and reduced lunch, there's a decrease of 198 points in the mean. And when we look at the performance of white students compared to the mean for all students, there's an increase of 41 points. That data shows that there is an achievement gap that has continued with the class of 2020-22. As a reminder, state calculates proficiency on a different scale than the College Board. As a result, 53% of the class of 2022 met benchmarks according to College Board, but 45% will be reported meeting benchmarks according to the state scale. Data and information concerning the national SAT and ACT can be found in the board packet. I'm going to switch my attention to advanced placement testing. In the spring of 2021, 2,244 tests were taken by 1,166 students. This was 2 less students than the spring of 2020 and 150 less tests than were taken in the spring of 2020. 72% of all tests were passed. This is the lowest passing rate in LT's history, again, due to the impact of the last year's schedule and instructional format. That might be the reason why we've seen this decline. It should be noted that the format of AP tests was drastically altered in 2020. In the spring of 2020, AP tests were kind of sliced in half. Only the constructed response portion was given, and that was given online as compared to all previous years when there was a speaking portion depending on your test, as well as a multiple choice portion of your test, and it was all taken on paper. In 2021, differences remained because, again, there was an online option as well as a paper option for students. So it's very difficult, again, to compare the scores from 2021 and 2020 to the past because the conditions, the actual test itself was completely different. That being said, there is some data that's very informative that we looked at that I'd like to share, which concerns enrollment data in advanced placement courses. 1,433 students enrolled in AP, but only 1,166 tested. College Board's research demonstrates a strong value in taking an AP course and passing an AP test. But in order to pass the test, you have to take the test. LT's enrollment and passing percentage by population groups is also indicative of an achievement gap. White students are 5 times more likely than Black students and 2 times more likely than Hispanic students to be enrolled in advanced placement. There's a similar enrollment percentage for each population group for the last 6 years. And the enrollment in AP courses is not comparable to our total enrollment, which is the goal when you're looking at the enrollment of every population group. The percentage of students passing tests also reveals an achievement gap. 54.5% of our white students earned a passing score compared to 37.7% of Hispanic students and 28.6% of Black students. It is true that we need to be careful with comparing assessment data from the last 2 years to prior years, but that is not to say that the data should be discounted completely. Where the value lies is comparing the class of 2022 to itself and looking at AP performance of students by population groups. What we learned from these comparisons is that LT continues to have an achievement gap in both enrollment in rigorous courses and test performance. We take this very seriously at LT. We have tried many past efforts at addressing this achievement gap, and we have taken some efforts recently to do some things different because things haven't been working in the past. Next month, you'll be hearing specifically about professional learning that started regarding the SIOP model, as well as Teaching for Black Lives, as well as the exploration of a program to increase enrollment in AP classes. And you'll hear more about all of these efforts in the next month. One last note, at the committee meeting, I was asked for additional historical data on the performance of all population groups on the SAT, and this information is forthcoming to the board, so you'll be receiving it very soon. Any questions?
Katie, can I just ask a question? I'm curious about, back to the students who, we said we had an unusual amount of students who chose not to take the AP tests. Have we probably haven't historically done some follow-up that says why did you or didn't you choose?
No, we do. So every time they cancel their test, we have them fill out a form and indicate why they canceled their test. Most of most of the time, right, in past years, it's because seniors find out that their college isn't going to take the score unless it's a 5, or they've already taken and fulfilled the credit that the college will give, because sometimes colleges will only give 1 English credit, and so if they pass their English test junior year, then they don't need to take it senior year because they've already earned the credit. This past year, we saw more responses for not feeling like they were prepared instructionally. And additionally, we saw more responses indicating that they were going to put their efforts on one test as opposed to multiple tests. And we saw that kind of, that played out in the data when you look at the number of students at the junior level that didn't take the US test or the physics test or the English test.
Are these kids that canceled or didn't choose originally to sign up for them?
No, I'm speaking specifically about students that canceled the test. There are some students that also didn't sign up originally. Those I can't speak to why they didn't sign up.
But most of the times, like this big gap of who didn't take the test is mostly canceled.
Yes.
That's a lot of information, Katie, and a lot, it was very, very well presented. Appreciate how you pulled it all together. It's we really have a lot of hard data to look at. It's some real reality checks, I think, as far as what kind of work we're going to do to improve. And I know we're going to talk about that next month.
And we'll be adding to that, the historical data that Katie talked about, we'll be getting that to you soon. So
All right, so
we'll add that to it.
Go ahead, Mike.
So can we also, as I mentioned in the committee meeting, see the grade point averages by population group, subpopulation group, because that also will help to paint a picture as well.
Yeah, I have that information as well.
The numbers that we see, and how big a gap we have across math and English.
Yes,
I
I
think
have that
that-
as well. It'll be forthcoming.
I think that goes to your point too, what we were talking about with some of the schools becoming so much more test optional, as you mentioned too, Michael, that the GPA is going to be even more closely probably looked at as an indicator for college readiness.
We'll add that data too.
Yeah.
So we'll see that in November.
We'll probably see the historical data before. The presentation, remember, is focused on English learning, on equity and belonging, staff development, and equity and belonging student connections. So you'll have the data before that.
Okay, so then the other thing.
Hoping by the end of this week.
Okay. The other thing that I would hope that we also see are areas in which we would look to do some short-term changes and what those are, as well as some of the long-term thinking and changes and when we will see that. And as I mentioned before, the class of 22 still has a semester and a half left that we can be doing something, especially when you see the huge gap with the students of color, and that's what we look at, and that's equity there, and where there's a huge gap. And some of the things that we could be doing in programs and looking at, hopefully they're new and different. Some of the suggestions, I know that the team is looking at some areas, but AVID is a program that I would hope that we can look into as a comparison to the other programs that the team is looking at as well, so that we have multiple areas of programs and a step change of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's always a balance of what are we doing systemic and long-term, but also what are we doing right now? And so I think we have some opportunities. You know, we can revisit, pull out some of the individuals in this report and revisit what we're doing with them to support them, even though we know on a day-to-day basis we have programs in place that they're getting support through. But it makes sense to, in the immediacy, see if we're missing something, see if there's other supports we can provide them that we're not currently providing them based upon the information we have in this report.
Right, because part of it could be like the culture too. I mean, while we do have a college prep and college going culture, I mean, that doesn't necessarily translate over to students of color in the culture that we have here. So that's also an area that we should be looking at.
Yeah, I think I would agree, there's a lot of opportunities there.
And I would ask when you're doing the GPAs to do it weighted and unweighted.
Right.
I think that will give a different story too. Because if you have kids that are all in unweighted classes, that gives a different story.
It does. It absolutely does. And
Thank you for
I
including
already have
that.
that one done.
You know, including both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Okay, I think we'll move on to our consent agenda, the next item on our list. As we move on, is there a motion then to approve the consent agenda portion as presented tonight?
So moved.
Okay, Allison,
Second.
Jill?
Yes.
Great. Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Member Thomas?
Yes.
Member Beta Daniels?
Yes.
Member Gretsch?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Swinehart?
Yes.
Member Dillon?
Yes. Great, thank you. All right. Awesome, guys, very good. It's 8:27. Yeah, we're gonna move on now to public comment. And I think we had two individuals who sent a blue slip form in via the website by 4:30 this afternoon. And then anybody who signed up tonight will be read in order of which they submitted their form. So I think if we start out first, Marilyn?
Molly McShane?
Oh, that's right. Molly McShane? Their first public comment?
Not here. I
Okay,
can
not
read it.
here. We'll move on to the next. Vicki Franzis? Hi.
Thank you very much. Got to get my glasses out. May I remove this for speaking? Prefer I not.
If you're comfortable.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Victoria Franzis. I've lived in the LaGrange area nearly all my life. I went to Lyons Township High School all 4 years, graduating in 1971. I want to say last month I made a mistake and said 75. That's when I graduated from college. But here, 71. I recently attended my 50th class reunion, which I enjoyed very much, which got me thinking about prior teachers that I studied under at LTHS. My favorite class was entitled, I think, Modern American History. It was taught by Kenneth Ludington my junior year. In 1970, the Vietnam War was roiling American discourse, so of course the politics and prosecution of the war was discussed in class. Halfway through this course, during class, students asked this teacher to tell them his opinion about the war. He refused. As I recall, he defended his refusal as follows. If I tell you my opinion, your temptation will be to just vomit up my opinion on exams. My goal is to teach you how to garner information and to expose you to a variety of opinions so that you can learn to think for yourselves and reach your own conclusions. This exchange took place over 50 years ago, but I remember it vividly because I had a sense, even as it was taking place, that I was watching something precious and perhaps precarious, a liberality that was already coming under assault in the larger culture. This teacher, and there were many others like him, recognized that the essence of good teaching was respect for the student and a belief that if the student was taught how to think instead of what to think, he was set for a mature, competent participation in American culture. Unfortunately, I contrast this approach with the current academic zeitgeist across the country. Students today are treated as a captive audience. They're frequently intentionally embarrassed for not holding politically correct views. There's an impulse today that compromises a kind of secular religion to indoctrinate students in the politically approved views of the day. Environmentalism as a neo-religion, critical race theory, and neo-Marxism is openly promoted as beyond any doubt and usually without the counterweight of opposing opinion. Incidentally, despite continued wheedling from the students, Mr. Ludington never did express his opinion about the war. I thank him for respecting his students and instilling the skills necessary to take inquiry wherever it led and to reach conclusions, even if tentative, without fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, who do we have next?
Bill C.
Oh, hi. I've got a point of order from the chairman, I guess I would address for something about this. We asked a question. Is that question something you're just gonna get back to us later, or do you answer that here?
That's traditionally how it works, is for matters that require that, I follow up later on.
Pardon me?
For matters that require a follow-up, I would follow up the next day or the day after that.
So how would I get, well, I know, but I mean, I asked a question, so how do I get it answered?
I would answer it tomorrow.
So you're gonna call me up on the phone or
Sure.
something?
Yes, if you leave your information,
Yep.
we'll follow up.
We'll follow up with you tomorrow.
We just don't get into dialogue in the
Oh,
rooms.
the only reason I asked it, because I kind of wanted everybody to hear the answer, but, because, so how does this work? You'll start a time and I can talk for 3 minutes? Oh, you'll let me know when I'm free to talk, and just say,
Yeah.
you're free, and then when 3 minutes are up, just say you're not free anymore. Okay, so say that. Ready?
Go ahead.
I'm waiting for the free signal.
Start.
Oh, start off? Oh, okay. All right, I'm here to talk about masks on kids. That was my question for them. I wanted them to explain to me why kids are mandated to wear masks. And I wanted them to tell me why here at Lyons Township and other schools, why they're mandated to wear a mask. Now, this is the superintendent's mandate, I'm assuming, because he's a superintendent. So he's in charge of everything. He's in charge of all these directors and everybody here, who by their charter cannot argue with whatever he says. They can't go against any decision he makes. So that's his decision to mask these kids. Now, that's what I wanted to ask him, how he came to his conclusion that these kids should all be masked. I wanted to ask him if he saw any of the suicide statistics or self-harming statistics or any of the statistics for mental health for our kids since this whole pandemic started. I'm gonna stand here because there's no sense talking to them. I'll talk to you guys. You guys seem to care, and they don't. They hate your kids. They are worse. They are, oh yes, they do. Yes, because they're worse than they are child abusers. Their children are getting sick.
Don't talk.
Please don't engage.
Don't let him talk, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's ignorant, I get it.
I would ask the audience, just
All right,
please
so
do not engage.
I'll finish my 3 minutes, and then you can do what you want. All right, doctor?
Well, you're here
Okay,
to
so-
address the board.
We know that these masks don't work. We know absolutely for sure they don't work. This is a joke you're getting played on you by these people. They're laughing at you. They don't care about your kids. They hate you. They hate your kids. You're stupid. You don't know how to raise your kids. You don't know how to teach your kids. That they do. And they're going to teach them. They're going to teach them. They're going to make sure that they get all involved with transgenderism, and they're going to teach them how to just, no matter what, the most important thing is what color you are. I thought this was America where you're supposed to be, who cares about your color? But no, they want to separate them all into groups with their colors. And who's this sexually oriented. All these different groups of these kids who are confused enough with their kids. And we don't need all this. We don't need all this teaching of transgenderism and twerking for these kids and taking them to nude art places and stuff. Look at this stuff coming up this week. They're having a book club meeting, Queer There and Everywhere, with Sarah Prager, and she's even going to sign books for them. Tomorrow they got a LGBT Kahoot trivia thing where they ask questions about transgenderism and what you know, and then they give you points for it and tell you, and if you fail, they tell you, you need to go to the library and look this stuff up. So this stuff is sick and sad. These people are the worst people in the world. They are worse than pedophiles because they are screwing your kids' brains.
Wow.
They are screwing their brains. These kids are dying. They're dying from self-mutilating. They're killing
Sir,
themselves.
thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
What's up? Thank you.
Is anybody there's a whole bunch of stuff that I just took notes on and I was going to read.
Okay, you
No,
can
just
leave
call it-
now.
just call
Thank
the next one.
you.
Just call the next one.
Take it easy. I'll listen
Marilyn,
here.
can we hear the next?
Judy Kaiser's next.
I asked some questions at the last board meeting about the Director of Equity and Belonging. The board didn't answer, but I don't use social media. But the September 1st article in the Landmark newspaper, which serves RB, the RB district, was very informative. It seems our school board has been very busy since January, adopting an equity statement that underscored how committed they are to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, which is really CRT. But critical race theory, but don't call it that. It freaks people out because CRT is a Marxist ideology laced with bigotry, hostility, and hate. It teaches students and staff to look at each other solely on their color of their skin. It's based on social and emotional learning instead of logic and reason. In some schools, educators were forced to take equity training focused on intersectionality, and they had to confess their racism and white privilege. Voicing their opposition would lead to their termination. Getting back to the article now. So now the board had to fill this position that they made up, so they unanimously approved of hiring Jennifer Rowe, at a starting salary of $155,000. Oh, but anyway, she'll be working at both South and North campuses. Some of her duties will include working with human resources to ensure that the hiring practices are equitable. She also will be working with Director of Curriculum on professional development for teachers and staff and doing community outreach. Rose said she is in a consortium of 15 other equity professionals across the Northwest suburban region. Quoting from the article, Rose said, "We're all African Americans except for one Latina. So much for diversity, equity, and inclusion." According to the article, the movement to hire equity professionals isn't just for schools. Equity hiring is all the rage over across sectors. Other public and private schools districts in the area have made DEI hires include Proviso Township, Fenwick High School, Oak Park Elementary, and Oak Park River Forest High School. I hope Jennifer Rowe asks the Oak Park River Forest equity professional about the blacks-only assemblies and the class where an 80% grade gets you an A. Really, how will this subject be graded? Will the students be expected to become good little social justice warriors in order to pass or even graduate?
I just want to remind everyone that we do have a policy for respect and being kind to others in the boardroom and to please follow that. And when your time is up, please sit down so that someone else has another turn.
I thought it was respect.
I think we have one more.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Leslie Mendoza.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Mendoza, and I'm a senior here at LT. Throughout the past year and a half, our nation has faced some of the most radical challenges due to tyrannical mandates and drastic changes as a result of the coronavirus. As unfortunate as it is, many of my fellow Americans have yet to realize the powerless situation we are in. Big government, the media, and our nation's leaders have managed to yet again turn us against each other. Conservatives around the country are constantly silenced, and your conservative students here at LT continue to be threatened and have to deal with immature comments from our fellow students and community members. We are still trying to understand why we are hearing these things from students who preach equality and acceptance. We figured out that tolerance and acceptance for all applies to the people who only have the same beliefs as they do. For years, we have heard that LT is a place where individuals feel included and a place that honors the inherent dignity within each and every individual. Prove it. Prove it to me. Prove it to all of us. That LT is a student, that LT provides students with a sense of belonging. For months, LT has kept our Turning Point USA chapter from becoming an official school club, a club that allows students to express themselves openly without fear of retaliation, something we can't do nowadays. These are not the ideas our nation was built on. I'd like to believe that people can still use their God-given right to speak their minds as though we still live in the land of the free. I know I'm not the only one who realizes that there's a war on our rights and our freedoms. Students have been forced to learn in some of the most challenging circumstances, and despite the comments and concerns from students and parents, we continue to be expected to learn under these circumstances. May I suggest we move classes to school lunchrooms, since there's apparently no fear of COVID there. Students sit about a foot from each other maskless, and there's no sign of COVID there. Science is there. Masks don't work. How about when teachers sit in their classrooms, about 20 of them, without masks? Why doesn't it apply to them? There's a problem here, and we got to deal with it. Not going anywhere.
Thank you. Marilyn, anyone else?
Yes, Janelle Bernstein.
Hi, good evening. Just want to thank everybody. Actually, I spoke to Dr. Terrell earlier this evening. What I'd like to speak on is the new COVID protocol changes in terms of testing and students and what just took place like within the last week and a hiccup that I encountered as a parent. Since the protocol changed, my daughter is fully vaccinated, but was sent home and couldn't be let back in without the appropriate test, which I thought I had gotten for her as quickly as possible to keep her out of school for as little time as possible. I learned this morning from Health Services it was an inappropriate test. Had to run, take another day off of work, get her the appropriate test, and thankfully she can return to school tomorrow, thankfully. What I'd like to find is we have to come up with a solution for what this new challenge is going to be so that we can quickly, whether it's shield testing that CPS is doing, we can get these kids that are vaccinated or not vaccinated, we can keep them in school or get them back to school quickly. I learned, and I'll share, that Brookfield is not a place that you can take your kid to be vaccinated because that test doesn't, it's considered inappropriate. So even if we could help streamline or give suggestions to parents where they can go so that we can keep them here because that's where they want to be. And that's it. I just want to say thank you. I think if there's any way that we, as a group, the board could come up with an appropriate measure so we're not running into this because flu season's coming and we're going to have kids out of school for no reason. And they should be tested if they have symptoms. I agree with that, but we're going to have them out of school for no reason. And it's precious time. I've got a junior that missed 2 days for no reason. So again, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Marilyn?
Yep, I think we have one more. Becky Lorenzen.
Hi, I'm Becky Lorenzen. I think most of you know me. I am just here to thank the board for all the work that you've been doing for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it would not be necessary had that been occurring along history. And I believe that these are additional items that are important for students to know so that they can critically evaluate all the information they're getting and make their own decisions. And I believe that that is the intent of the board. I just wanted to thank Dr. Waterman, Dr. Rowe, and Dr. Tyrell for coming to our annual Race Unity Rally in LaGrange, and really appreciate also all the board members that came and supported that effort. And that our organization, the Community Diversity Group, is here to create understanding between people of all different backgrounds. We believe a lot of the animosity is due to people really not understanding each other. And we're trying to promote an understanding where we can all live together in a world peacefully. I also am glad to hear that the PTC is connected to the Glenbard Group. I listened to one of their speakers a few years ago who was a man from an Islamic background, and his talk was very enlightening. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to create a better world. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, that's all for comment. Thank you, Marilyn. And just a reminder to everyone and anyone who's listening that we do have an FAQ section under the board tab that addresses a lot of the recurring issues that might surface during public comments or questions that we get in the community. We do update that as these issues come to the table. So that's a great place and a good resource to go and find out our positions on different issues and what we're working on. I think that concludes our meeting for tonight. And our next committee of the whole meeting is
November 8th.
November 8th with our regular action meeting on November 15th. That information will get posted and sent out to the community as well. It is now, if my phone works, 8:46. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you for coming.